Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So folks, there's no beating around the bush. There's no, trying to figure out exactly what I'm talking about here. Thumbnail image says it all. Title says it all. Yesterday, the Lions got the shocking and somewhat depressing news that All-Pro center Frank the Tank Ragnow is retiring. Frank Ragnow retires after being a 4-time Pro Bowler and a 3-time second-team All-Pro player. Now, Frank Ragnow's retirement is sudden, but I'm going to say this. To many people, it is not as surprising as some would like to make it out to be. Many knew that Frank Ragnow had been playing through and battling through injuries for many years. As we all know, this is a guy that has had has had a turf toe injury that is unoperable. It can't be fixed with operation. And when you consider that and all the other injuries he's had over the years, it's those injuries that ultimately proved to be the reason that Ragnow decided to walk away from the game at, 29 years old or about 30 years old. Either way, the point is he only played for 7 or 8 seasons. He didn't play very long. And if we think about it realistically and seriously, Ragnow is now the third big and prominent player that the Lions have had that's retired from them in the last 3 decades earlier than what would have been considered their time to do so. The other 2 players everybody's already very well familiar with, and those being Megatron and Barry Sanders. Now, that's the actual news. Frank Ragnow retires. A lot of people are like, oh my God, didn't expect to see this happening, at least not this suddenly, and at least not this soon. Now we're in a problem. Now we're in a pickle. Now we have a serious issue. And I'm going to be honest with you. The move has sent shockwaves through the entire Lions community, and many fans are now wondering how the Lions offense is going to now move forward without the anchor that has led the offensive line for the last 7 years. And let's call for what it is. Frank Ragnow has been one of the best centers of his time. And you know what? When you lose a player like Frank Ragnow, it's definitely going to hurt. There's no way about that, because that's how good Frank Ragnow is and was. But for everybody out there, 97.1, Woodward Sports, and a couple others who are trying to make it sound like that Frank Ragnow's retirement is a death knell to the Lions Super Bowl aspirations, once again, I'm sorry to say it, but these are people that are trying their dead level best to get Lions fans to get all hyped up, to get all emotional, just so that way they can get views. Just so that way they can get people to be like, oh my God, we're in such trouble now. No, we're not. Is it a problem? Yes, it's a problem. But is it a problem that has absolutely no solution? And is it a problem that all of a sudden changes everything about the Lions 2025 season? As my thumbnail image states, this changes nothing. It is still full steam ahead. Because it is, in fact, my informed opinion that the Lions had I would say, inkling about this. They knew about this, And again, the moves that they made this offseason, again, show that they were preparing accordingly for the very real possibility, not guarantee at the time, but possibility that Ragnow would decide to retire before the season started. Let's take a look at what the Lions have done here over the last couple of months, getting ready for where we're at right now. Consider that the Lions made the curious decision at the time to draft 2 guards rather than addressing an edge rusher sooner than they did. Yeah, they drafted an edge rusher in Ahmed Hazanin in round 6. Absolutely loved that pick. Thought it was a great pick. Think that he's going to be a great player for us. But the point of the matter is that everybody suspected the Lions were going to draft a guard to help replace Kevin Zeitler. But what nobody was expecting was that they were going to draft 2. The moves that Holmes has made, they now make absolute perfect sense when you consider Frank Ragnow's sudden retirement. And as such, it lets me know that the Lions had a vague inkling, they did know, they did suspect that something might happen with Frank Ragnow. Because again, I've said this before, there's very little that happens in the Lions organization that all of a sudden catches them completely off guard. That's because of the great open communication that Holmes and Campbell have fostered with their team and with their players. Again, I keep using the example of Taylor Decker when he wanted a new contract. No sooner had the season ended in 2023, and then all of a sudden, hey, you know what? Or 2022, whichever year it was, and then the Lions were approached by Taylor Decker, and he said, hey, I want to stay here. I would like to get a new contract. And the Lions said, hey, we understand you'd like a new contract, but we have other things we need to take care of first, but we will get to you. That's the exact kind of point I'm making here. Because of the open door policy, so to speak, that the Lions have with their players, it's like, hey, if you have a problem or if you feel that there's something that we need to know about, the door's always open. You can come and talk to us and we will sit down and we will address it like men. That's exactly why I think the Lions made the moves that they did. Frank Ragnow wasn't telling them for certain that he was going to retire, but I guarantee you this sure as God made little green apples that Frank Ragnow definitely let them know that he's like, hey, I am probably considering this. I haven't made up my mind just yet, but there is a possibility that I could consider retiring here. And it lets me know that, hey, when you take a look at what the Lions did in the offseason, as far as the draft, as far as the players that they decided not to sign, who they did decide to sign, it lets me know that the Lions have a plan, and as such, fans should not worry about the team's ability to continue to play at a high level, and they should continue to have their aspirations for a Super Bowl. And it also makes sense why the Lions have kept Graham Glasgow and decided to keep him despite a lot of fans wanting him to be let go for having a subpar season in 2024. Let me explain. First and foremost here, let's go back to when the Lions brought Glasgow in. There were 2 main reasons why they did this a couple of years ago. The first and, prominent reason was to solidify their left guard position to then opposite right guard Kevin Zeitler. But the second reason that the Lions brought in Graham Glasgow is due to his massive versatility to play any of the 3 interior offensive line positions. What does that tell me? It tells me that the Lions always wanted to have a great backup option for Ragnow in case of injury during the season that would sideline him potentially, or, as we now know, the retirement potential. This tells me unequivocally that the likelihood is that Graham Glasgow is probably going to reassume center duties just like he did when he was with the Lions back in 2016 and 2017 sparingly, but then Go back to 2018, the actual year that we drafted Frank Ragnow. Graham Glasgow was the starting center that year. What did the Lions do? They used Frank Ragnow as a guard that year. So the idea that all of a sudden, oh my God, what are the Lions going to do? We don't have an option. Bullcrap. Yeah, we do have an option. In fact, we don't have just a option. We have options. Because let's understand something here. Yes, I believe Graham Glasgow is probably going to be the guy that they're going to fill in to be the new center. Because it's worth noting that if you go back to 2018, Graham Glasgow had his best overall season as a blocker while playing center for the Detroit Lions that year. Because if you go back to PFF, all of his blocking grades that year in 2018 were above 70. His overall blocking grade was a 71.1. His pass blocking grade was a 73.8. His run blocking grade was a 70.4. And that year, he only allowed 1 sack as the starting center. That year, also, if you compare Graham Glasgow to the other centers that were playing in the NFL that year, he actually did pretty damn well, all things considered. Like I just said, his overall blocking grade, according to PFF, was a 71.1. That was ranked 11th best out of all centers that year. His run blocking grade of a 70.4, that was ranked 8th best that year. And his pass blocking grade of a 73.8 was ranked 13th best that year. That right there tells me that Graham Glasgow, when he was playing starting center for us in 2018, he actually did a pretty damn good job for us. And what that clearly ought to show you, in another way, is that Graham Glasgow is more than capable to fill in for Ragnow. Am I going to say he's going to do better than Frank Ragnow? Oh, hell no, I'm not going to say that. But is he capable to fill in? Yes, he is. And the Lions should have at least the solid assurance that Graham Glasgow should be able to fill in for this season, and it shouldn't impact the Lions' offense that much. I'm not saying it's not going to impact it at all. Obviously, when you lose a player like Frank Ragnow, it's going to have a bit of an impact. But all of a sudden saying that, oh my God, it's such a detriment, we're in trouble now, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, calm down on the doomsday talk here. You people that just want to make everybody get all riled up because, hey, you know what? We're just trying to get as many views as we possibly can here. Yes, it is going to have an impact. But saying that all of a sudden everything's going to fall to pieces is just being absolutely over the top and being ridiculous. Plus, let's also think about this. I mentioned it earlier. The Lions drafted 2 guards. They drafted Miles Frazier and they drafted Tate Ratledge. But wait a minute here. What do we know about these guys? Especially Tate Ratledge. Oh, that's right. They've been cross-training them. They're not just having them play guard, whether it's right guard or left guard. They're having them train at all 3 positions, right guard, center, and left guard. They want them to be trained to be able to fill in at any of those spots. Wait a minute here. If there was such a prominence on that particular training this offseason, once again, it would tell me, as I just stated not that long ago, the Lions had a plan. They had a suspicion that something like this could happen. This is not something that caught the Lions flat-footed. They had a suspicion that this could have happened. Now again, like I said, it probably surprised them still a little bit that it happened so suddenly. Because again, I would have thought, hey, you know what? Maybe Frank Ragnow might have played 1 more year, maybe 2 with as good as the Lions are right now to really try and get that Super Bowl win. But you know what? Sometimes the injuries just do the talking for you. And it's like, listen, I've given everything I possibly can. My body just can't take no more. I have to be concerned about my long-term health. So yeah, it does come as a bit of a surprise, but it's not one that should absolutely just be like, oh my God, we didn't see this potentially coming. We've known Frank Ragnow's had the injuries for years. We've known that, hey, you know what? There is a potential. I myself wanted to deny the potential could happen right now, but it's like, hey, you know what? It's not something that completely surprised me when I heard the news. I was like, yeah, it kind of is shocking, but it's not completely surprising. But the point I'm trying to get at here is this. You have Tate Ratledge, you have Miles Frazier that we drafted this year. But wait a minute here. We also have Christian Mahogany from last year as well. So it's like, okay here. You have Graham Glasgow, you have Ratledge, you have Mahogany, and you have Frazier. We have options in the middle. So again, it is my informed opinion that the Lions will reshuffle their offensive line interior and probably, I'm not saying definitely, but probably what the Lions are going to have as their starting offensive line going into 2025 now is left tackle will probably be Taylor Decker. Left guard will probably be Christian Mahogany. The center, probably Graham Glasgow. Right guard, Tate Ratledge. Right tackle, Penei Sewell. Now, the reason why I'm saying probably and not definitely is because everybody's going to point out to the fact that Tate Ratledge has been taking primarily the first team reps at center during the OTA periods. There's two ways I can look at that. The first way I can look at it is, okay, yes, maybe they're considering Tate Ratledge to be their new center. It is a possibility. He did do some center reps while he was in college. But the second option that I think that this could potentially be is, again, with the cross training, the Lions are trying to get their guys up to speed as quickly as possible. They want to make sure that everybody is able to play the positions as quickly as possible, as best as possible. So for me, it's like, okay, yeah, you know what? Graham Glasgow is probably the most experienced guy they've got at playing center right now. But they need to have a backup option to him in case something happens, just like how when they brought Graham Glasgow in for Frank Ragnow. So wouldn't it make a hell of a lot of sense for a guy that had some experience in college playing the position to get a lot of the first team reps to get up to speed in that position as quickly as possible? So then it's like, okay, Graham Glasgow's the starting center, but then you now have a guy in Tate Ratledge who, if something happens to Glasgow, we can instantaneously plug him in and then, oh, you know what? Wait a minute. We now have Miles Frazier who can come in and play right guard where Tate Ratledge was. Makes perfect sense to me. Now, I know some people, even though I'm doing my absolute best to explain all this, they're still going to be worried because the interior of our offensive line is by far the weakest due now to its inexperience. Because it's like, hey, you know what? Tate Ratledge is a rookie. Christian Mahogany was a rookie last year. Neither of these guys have been full-time starters in the NFL because, oh, well, that's right. One's a rookie. You can't have been a full-time starter at this point. And the other guy only, I think, was a starter for one game last year and filled in a couple of other spots. But, again, I believe that with Glasgow in the middle, plus you have the two experienced players of Decker and Sewell on both ends, that's going to be a buffer, if you will, to help out our guys, such as Mahogany and Ratledge at the two guard positions, to get up to speed a lot quicker. Because, again, this isn't Glasgow's first rodeo, this isn't Decker's first rodeo, and this ain't Sewell's first rodeo. They've been playing the game now for quite a while. They know exactly how to help out each other. And one of the things about playing offensive line is there has to be communication. There has to be a sense of brotherhood between those five guys because that unit is all about communication and chemistry with each other. Every offensive lineman is relying upon the other to make sure that, hey, not only do we keep the quarterback safe, but we make sure we open up rushing lanes for our running game. And then let's just keep in mind something else here. We have Hank Fraley as our offensive line coach and also the run game coordinator. Do you honestly think that Hank Fraley has no ability to try and figure out, okay, you know what? Yeah, we don't have Frank the Tank Ragnow anymore. Yeah, that sucks. But if you honestly think that all of a sudden, you know, Hank Fraley is just going to throw his arms up in the air and say, I quit, you'd be a fool. I guarantee you, Hank Fraley has more than enough of a contingency plan to be like, hey, you know what? Yeah, not having Frank around is going to suck a little bit, but we will move forward. We will still get the job done. I have no doubt that the Lions will be fine overall. And again, let's consider the fact that both Mahogany and Tate Ratledge, there's a reason why the Lions drafted them. There's a reason why they have them. Let's go back to Mahogany last year when he filled in limited action while Kevin Zeitler was dealing with some injuries for a little bit. Oh, that's right. If you go back to PFF, Mahogany had an overall blocking grade of an 81.6. He had a run blocking grade of 80.8, and a pass blocking grade of 82.6. For a guy that's a 6th round draft pick, filling in for Kevin Zeitler, who's still considered one of the best guards in the NFL, that's pretty damn impressive. Gives me a lot of damn confidence, gives me a lot of damn assurance that, hey, you know what? You give this guy a little bit more training, you let him know that he's probably going to be in competition for a starting guard position, he'll be able to fill in just fine. And then when you move off of Mahogany and then you take a look at Tate Ratledge, who, oh, that's right, if I recall correctly, Tate Ratledge was considered what, the number 2 guard in the NFL draft this year, and has been considered one of the most, prolific guards in college over the last couple of years, and absolutely fits the Lions team mindset and philosophy to an absolute T as a dirt dog kind of player that does not give a care who you are. He's going to come after you the same way. When he was playing at Georgia last year, I've highlighted this as well about how, Tate Ratledge played for Georgia, one of the best college programs in the NCAA. Last year's overall blocking grade was a 73.3. His run blocking grade was a 70.2, and his pass blocking grade was a superb 82.8. So it's like, okay here. We have guys that clearly can play the positions. We have 2 very experienced and very good tackles in, freaking Decker and also in Sewell. And again, we have a guy in Graham Glasgow who's literally played every single position on the interior of the offensive line. He's played left guard, he's played right guard, he's played center. What better option to make sure that those 2 guys that are right next to him are able to play the positions that they need with a guy that's like, hey, you know what? I can help you with this because I know how to play that position. I've played it. I can give you pointers. I can tell you what to look for. Whether it's right guard, whether it's left guard, hell, whether it's center. The point is, I believe that the Lions have selected and placed their trust in these players because they know that they will rise to the challenge and make the difference our team needs. And I believe that the Lions have monsters on their offensive line that will take the doubt that others have in them now because, again, doesn't matter where you look, everybody's like, oh my God, Frank Ragnow's gone. The Lions are about to fall apart. They're going to absolutely suck. Okay. Trust me, we've been through this diamond dance I don't know how many times before, and the Lions have said, okay, you know what, just keep feeding that monster, just keep telling us we can't do something because, oh my God, we don't have this player anymore, or we don't have the ability to do this. All it does is it gives them more motivation, it gives them more fuel to get more out of them to be even better because the doubters don't want to give them credit. And all they want to do is find more reasons, more excuses as to why they can't do something. Goes back to the episode I made earlier, yesterday, with what, Dan Campbell said. He's like, hey, give us any nugget that you want. Tell us we can't do something. All it's going to do is just give us more fuel and more motivation to prove you wrong. That's why when some people were like, oh, do you think we should tweak the message from what you said yesterday? Hell no, I don't think we should tweak the message. If anything, I double down on it. It's like, oh, you now think we can't do something because we don't have Frank the Tank Ragnow? Okay, just you watch. The Lions will find, once again, the motivation, they will use the fuel, and they will use it to the best of their ability. And trust me, if there's one thing we know about the Lions, when they do something to the best of their ability, it's pretty damn hard to top it. So yes, it is shocking, it is saddening that Ragnow's gone and is retiring to pursue and, get better with his health. The only thing I'm going to say is I wish he would have stayed on one more season to get that Super Bowl ring he so richly deserved. Because he did deserve it. He had earned it. And it now kind of sucks because it's like, hey, you know what? If the Lions get all the way to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl this year, that's going to hurt. That's going to sting from a personal perspective because it's like, hey, you were right there. I guarantee you this, if you could ask Barry Sanders or Megatron if they knew if they'd have stayed just one more year to get the Super Bowl, they would have stayed that one more year. They would have stayed. And I know I'm playing, way out in front, and I'm, kind of being like a fortune teller here, but it's like, just imagine what it'll be like for Frank Ragnow if the Lions get all the way to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, and that's what's going to be on his mind. What if I had just stayed one more season, and I would have finally gotten that ring? That's the only thing about this that really kind of saddens me, because it's like, he was right there. And if it happens, it's going to haunt him for a while. I know obviously everyone's going to say he needs to pursue his health, and I absolutely agree. But it's like for players, the Super Bowl is the ultimate prize. That's why they put their bodies through the pain, the injuries, and everything else that they go through year after year. And if Frank Ragnow finds out that, hey, you know what, if I'd have just stayed one more year, I'd have finally had that Lombardi trophy. I'd have finally had that Super Bowl ring. Yeah, that's going to be a haunting nightmare for a long time. But anyway, folks, I presented my message. Some people are going to say that I'm just being absolutely overconfident. Some people are going to say that, you know what, I got pie in the sky ambitions. To hell with them. I really don't care. You know why? Because this is the same kind of nonsense I've been dealing with for years, especially when it came to my opinion about, Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and Jared Goff. I'm just now changing the narrative a little bit, and now we're talking about Frank Ragnow and the Lions' offensive line. I still think the Lions are in a good position. I'm not worried about it. And I'm telling you, I don't think you should be either. I think the Lions have a plan. I think they had a plan in place for a long time. But anyway, do with this information what you will. With having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage you all to watch the next episode. Also encourage you all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage you all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also want to encourage you all, please make sure you share this content. Again, there's a lot of people out there right now that have all these opinions. The best thing that needs to happen is we need people to hear all perspectives, not just the doom and gloom ones. So please share the content. And with that, I hope that this perspective that I gave you was able to maybe mitigate, calm down some fears, maybe give you something different to think about, so that way it's not all the doom and gloom perspective that's out there right now. I also hope everyone has something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.